welcome everybody. I'm your host, Harrison Klein, and I have a fabulous panel for you guys today. It's unbelievable. We're going to explore some really good stuff on cultural happiness, playfulness, joy, all the things that make life wonderful. And we're going to deal with this in a very, very unique way. Rosy, you need to get in the light. Okay, thank you, Rosy. I'm going to introduce, I always introduce the band after the first song. So here's the band. Ashwini is our drummer. So she's from India by way of Nashville right now. We're talking to, we're talking to Rosy Sekhri, who is in Hong Kong right now, and she's all over the world, a world traveler, and I've traveled with her. I've had so much fun. We've been in many different places. Shifra, Hendrie, an old friend of mine, a Kabalist, a beautiful woman from very deep in every kind of way. Victoria Christensen, a happiness psychologist, happiness and relationship psychologist. So everything that we're doing here has a value in culture. So we're going to explore the cultural values, the cultural playfulness, the cultural ways to what happiness, playfulness, joy, and these kinds of things mean to our careers, to our lives, to our inspired transformations. So, John DeMartini uses the quote, and he probably made the quote up, but I use it all the time. He said, "The master lives in a state of inspired transformation." So I want to start out with everybody and ask them what that means to them. What does that mean to happiness, inspired transformation? Let's start out with Shifra, because her eyes are all lit up.
Could just be the lighting. So inspired transformation to me means, let me just start by saying, as Kabbalah explains, since the archetypal experience of Adam and Eve, in whose souls, cosmic souls, were contained all of the souls of every human being who's ever lived since then, and meaning us, there was, the original experience was one of like inside out bliss, connection to the divine, connection to the self, connection to one another, a world without fear, without death, without guilt, without shame, without that little inner voice that's constantly tearing us down. And then after that, the fall from the Garden of Eden, so to speak, whether you take it literally as I do, or whether you take it archetypally, it's the same idea. So this other programming that we call the human condition was superimposed upon each of us, and in a way that's very internalized and personal, which is what makes it so hard to deal with. So inspired transformation means to me, as we move through life, hopefully more and more propelled by what we truly believe in, what we truly yearn for from the depths of our being, we hit obstacles, and those obstacles are designed as a catalyst for inspired transformation. So the purpose, the desire, the inner energy, the inner self meets the outer obstacle, busts through it in ways that we probably all could be very specific about, opens up a larger capacity, and more of the self shines through. And there isn't anything, I think, that creates more authentic, long-term and profound happiness than that experience, especially when you start to feel like you're mastering it. At first it could be kind of discouraging, like, oh, I'm back here again. But once you learn like how that pattern works, it just gets more and more exciting, more and more miraculous. I see some nodding from my co-panelists here.
Yeah, so inspired transformation and happiness, they are correlated. It says, let's take a look at what Ashwini, what do you have to say about inspired transformation and happiness? And what is the correlation that you can see between the two?
Thank you, Harrison, and I want to thank you and all the panelists for being on this phenomenal Zoominar, and it's a privilege and honor to be with all of you. So thank you very much.
It's my great honor to have you guys.
Thank you. So for me, inspired transformation is since we are in mother's womb, since we get into mother's womb as human beings, the mother's energy is nurturing us. We are, as we are in mother's womb, and when mother hears songs, when he sees the light, when she hears the, music, we are also in the same vibration as mom. So when the mother is happy, we are happy. So it starts in the womb itself. And the fetus is coming through that birth canal. I mean, the fetus which becomes a newborn, is coming through so much narrow canal, and the fetus feels like, wow, what is going on? And so, but once the baby comes out and looks at the light, we are in the universal phenomena of happiness, because the mother took so much care of us all those 9 months. We came out through a phenomenal experience of coming through the birth canal, having absorbed all this bacterium that's coming through the mother's womb and coming through the birth canal. And we are so nurtured, and we are like filled with powerful positive vibration. And it's just remembering those moments of how happy we have been since we took this physical form. We are spiritual beings having a temporary physical body and mind and spirit. So just remembering that throughout our lives is an inspired transformation for me.
Awesome. I love that point of view. That's very interesting. I love your Kabbalistic point of view too, Shifra. So those are two unique point of views, and I'm sure they're very cultural in every way. So Victoria, how about you? How would you define inspired transformation and happiness? Because you work with happiness with people in the psychological realm all the time. You're counseling people in this area. So talk to me about all that. Talk to us about all that.
Yeah, and I will say hello to everybody. I am in Oslo because somebody asked. So I'm living in Norway, Oslo, but I am originally from Spain. So I am also honored, and I also will say that I agree completely with my two panelists. It's a wonderful way to see how people can approach the same idea in different ways, and that's what it makes us so enriched, right? So my inspired transformation, what I see that works most with people, they are coming here to me in the sessions to start with a lot of problems, the history very linked to who they are as the history and what has happened in the past. And when they learn to live in the now, when they understand that the past doesn't exist and that the oldest you will be is now and the youngest I will be is now, and they stop and they start to wonder, and then they see really the miracle that it is just to be alive. I mean, if we start to think about the intelligence of the cells and everything, so when they stopped and realized that I am living now, it comes like a wonder, and in the wonder, it comes all the happiness that is possible to have. Is a state of being, right? And you know, all of you, that. And when you are in that state of mind, the inspiring transformation is natural, because then it comes all your gifts and everything that you have come to the life in this time that you have to achieve. So it's like ideas and everything flows naturally. And what I see is that they transform just by letting be, without doing nothing more than just being. And for me, what?
63 trillion cells in unison and harmony.
Yes, and when I am telling them, well, if you are sad or you are happy, it doesn't matter. Your body is working anyhow. So for me, the most transformational inspiration I can get is I am always amazed about the miracles and everything, and how little we really know. We don't know anything. We can send people to the moon, but we have not actually create anything. Everything is already there to discover.
Well, I happen to be on the moon quite a bit of my time.
Well, I have been there, I think, many times. I hope that it's not was in psychosis, something like that. So that's why my approach, and that's why I try to inspire people to get out of the suffering and just be the best that they can be.
We're going to explore that, suffering and happiness, and what that correlation is as well, too. What, Shifra, you're
sorry, I'm mute. I said I would like to also know more about how to get to the moon.
Yeah, well,
if we get to that.
Some of us get there by rocket fuel, others get there by mental exertion.
Right.
by spiritual exertion.
Intriguing.
And just say just one little thing about the moon, because it's very, very funny. When I was little, I really believed that the moon was following me, because wherever I was going, I saw the moon. So I was really hiding, and but it is there, it is there. So the moon is just something else.
Kabbalistically, I just want to say the moon represents the whole feminine principle. It represents humanity at large, but the feminine, yeah. That's very special.
Just like Victoria, the moon is following you.
Well, maybe I am a little bit out on the moon.
Okay. Rosy, it's your turn. What do you think of inspiration and happiness and all that? How is that correlated for you?
Actually, I think because growing up in India, it was just easier to be happy because you grow up like with spirituality, and anything happens, if it's not according to your way, we just like, okay, God's wish, So I think it kind of makes life easier. And when I look at happiness, I guess I have found happiness in the beggar's eyes. I've found happiness in my puppy's eyes. I go to my garden and I see flowers and I am so happy, I can't tell you. So happiness is actually inside job, and nobody can teach you. It's just that whenever I have gone down, I mean, the first thing I do is my connection. My spirituality and my faith has helped me so much. And the moment I surrender, because I remember, like when we come out of our mother's womb, we are basically surrender because we can't do anything on our own. So I think in that surrender, things happen for us. If you see animals, birds, they have just surrendered. Life is just kind of going on for them. So with me, I think I would just say happiness is inside job. And there are times when you can actually find real joy in something which is not going your way. You just have to go inside and feel that. And once you get inside and you surrender to that problem or challenge, whatever you're going through, then you see that it was for a reason. And the moment you understand the reason, it's like that aha moment. And you're like, whoa, that's amazing. So I guess it's each to its own. And I find my happiness in my meditation, my spirituality, looking at so many different aspects. Like, for example, I was going through a very tough time last year. So I actually didn't know what to do. And then I just went to this old age home. I said, you know what, I just want to do something. I was there with those people. We had hugs and kisses, and they have nothing. I tell you, I was in India and I worked with them for a month. They had nothing. And after just spending few hours every day, I totally forgot my pain. And I was like, wow, I mean, happiness is actually an inside job. They were happy with so little that I spoke to them. They were so happy with like that they were recognized. So I guess it's everywhere. We just have to change our perspective. And this is it. I can only tell you with my experience.
Okay, so there's a number of things that you said that I wanted to explore as well, because what we have here represented on this panel is, 5 different cultures and also 3 different religions. And so each of these areas, each of these things have definite values regarding happiness. And you talk about inside and outside jobs now. So I just want to ask you, Rosy, can happiness be outside influenced as well? Is there such a thing as outside influence that makes happiness happen, or that stimulates happiness into a transformation?
It does. I mean, we are humans having, as Ashwini said, we are souls having this human experience.
Yeah, that was Ashwini's statement, yes.
Yes, yeah, that was Ashwini, yeah. So, okay, yeah. So the thing is, if we start depending too much on how others are going to bring us happiness, then we start depending too much, and then we create actually more unhappiness. And that's what I've realized. But you know what? As I was I was telling you, I follow Sikhism, and they have their holy scripture. And the gurus were born like only 500 years ago, and they have 10 gurus. Like the last one was born 300 years ago, and after that they said there won't be any guru anymore. The scriptures is everything. Then in that scripture it states very clearly that why you human, why you fool, why you crying and complaining? You're just getting what you sowed. You're just reaping what you sowed. And just reading those lines becomes so easy. Okay, maybe, you know, there's something to learn in whatever I'm going through. So then outside doesn't bother us so much. Then you go inside and see, okay, you know, life is happening for me. So then I don't give too much importance to outside.
Okay.
I go inside and I get my answers.
Okay, I wanted to introduce Burnie too. Thank you, Rosy. That was awesome still, because I think that there are some things, there are some abilities for outside externalism to stimulate happiness within us. It's my opinion, but we're going to deal with that in just a minute, because there's a lot of things that we all brought up that we want to talk. But I want to introduce Burnie to our panel. Burnie comes to the U.S. and Florida by way of Jamaica.
Montserrat in the West Indies, a little small island in the Caribbean called Montserrat. That's where
Montserrat. All right, Montserrat. All right, very cool. So Burnie, this is Victoria, Rosy, Shifra, Ashwini, and you know me. So
hey guys, I've been listening to you guys. Very good conversation. I finally got some connection.
Yeah, it took a little while, but you're here now, and that's all that matters. I love your little outfit there too. And Shifra, I love your necklace too. Okay, so this is fun. So Burnie, why don't you also give us a little bit? If you heard the beginning of this, we talked about inspired transformation, and we talked about a little bit of inside and outside happiness. So give us a little your take on what that means to you.
Happiness to me is just being content with who you are, being gracious for life, and not look for yesterday. You can't fix what happened yesterday, no matter how tragic it was or how great it was. You can't go back and fix nothing that happened yesterday. So be happy in the moment. This now moment is all we have, simply because we're not sure about tomorrow. See this pandemic that's going on right now? We don't know what's going to happen. So for me, happiness is living in the moment, being grateful for every second, for every breath that I take. That for me is happiness.
Okay, so how does happiness equate to transformation in this case?
Well, when you're happy, you're preparing yourself for that transformation, because you're living in the moment. And if you're making each moment a special moment, when the time for transformation takes place, guess what? You've already expressed it, lived it, done it, be it, and so it is.
You know, there was a book called The Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. And what he said, this is my favorite quote from Dan Millman and from a lot of books. Actually, he said, there's no such thing as an ordinary moment.
There is not.
I love that. So, I mean, it's very inspirational in the instant of this moment now, in the instance of this time now. So I wanted to also kind of ask people about the value of happiness. What is the value of happiness and playfulness? How does that equate to what we want to do with our lives and all that? Is it just a natural state? Is it a developed state? And does it affect our actions in what kind of ways for our goals and for our careers and things of that nature? Okay, Ashwini, how about you?
Thank you, Harrison. And so happiness is a natural state of living. I think the panel so far has said very nicely about how we are, all these trillions of cells in our body have constant contact with the universal forces. We are breathing the air that the universe is producing every single second. We drink water, the fire. You know, we are ourselves organized in the form of tissues. We are in constant contact with the universal forces. What else is not there, not to be happy? You know, the cells are helping us to eat, to think, to talk. And when we are unhappy, the cells are getting crushed and causes this dis-ease. Happiness is ease and unhappiness is causing dis-ease.
Okay, so you work in the oncology department, and you have a lot of contact with all these things, and I know that this is part of your primary responsibility. How about happiness and health? Talk about disease and all that, because
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's perfect. It's a wonderful question. So the cells, when we are happy, the cells are, like there are so many millions of enzymes and reactions happening every single second. That's why when Rosy said inner, going inward, so our inner being, I call that inner being, is doing so much engineering. It's called inner engineering. And the enzymes are produced at the right time. The genes are producing protein at the right time. The protein is becoming and going, the blood is flowing. Even when we are sleeping, our blood flows from the tippy toes to the top of our head. We are breathing and the heart is pumping blood even while we are sleeping. So the cells are functioning 24 hours a day and 365 days in a year. And for the cells to be functioning properly, the state of abundance, which is a natural state of happiness, because we live in a universal abundance, giving us enormous air, enormous water, and cells can breathe because when there is no air, there is no more human being.
okay, so happiness affects ourselves.
Absolutely, it affects our cells, and because any of these biochemical functions in the body, so there are a lot of diseases that can come during the child develops. There are a lot of errors of metabolism and diseases because the protein is not produced at the right time for the right reaction, and so it can disease. I mean, it is mind-boggling really to understand how phenomenal is our human body. It is marvelous engineering by God. And any of these enzymes or reactions have any block, can result in something deficient. And we have to provide that externally because the cells are unable to make it. So cancer is, I feel, this is my view, is because of the cells not able to function properly, and normal cells are not functioning, but the abnormal cells are dividing so much. Our body goes through a lot of cells. They're formed every single day and they're dying. New cells are produced, and then when the time comes, they die. And then so this process of birth and death of cells within our body is constant phenomena. And some of the cancers result because the cells that are supposed to die are not dying when they're supposed to die. Or vice versa, the cells are not forming when there's no new cells being produced, then the cells are not being produced because of something. So it's a natural state of abundance. It's a natural state for us, happiness. The more, it's a vibrational state. Just being happy, being abundant is a state of vibration. And that's why when Rosy said we just have to go inner, and also Victoria and Shifra said, phenomenal, powerful, and also Burnie, that our cells are in constant contact with the universal forces. That is the mantra, actually.
As a medical specialist, I've heard it said that cancer, and this is my opinion as well, and also my experience, cancer is about carrying long-term hurt.
That's
So
right.
that's long-term hurt, and that means that that it affects and blocks happiness in a multitude of ways. So what about the enzymes and the chemical release of the things that we know as sort of addictive happiness, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the endorphins, all those kinds of things? How does that relate? Burnie, you're shaking your head. Do you have an opinion on that?
I am so in tune with what she's saying, because right now with this pandemic that's going on, a lot of the people who are dying from this are those people who are so scared. They're so locked in, they break down their immune system. And when that happens, that's the opportunity for this disease to crawl in. If you have a vibrant, strong immune system, then you can go through this and not even realize that something has happened. My daughter, who is a firefighter paramedic, she's in the front row. She's one of the first responders. And she realizes now what I've been teaching her for years. The most important thing in your body, in your line of work, is your immune system. And if you have a healthy immune system, if you have a healthy mental attitude, you can go through anything. So I'm hearing her and I'm agreeing with her 100-fold.
Okay, how about those chemicals, Shifra? I mean, the dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and
They play a role. They do play a role, yes.
Yes, and in your case, Burnie, I mean, I don't know how, since you're an herbalist, there are, plants also affect our experience.
Yes.
Yes, so what kind of plants help to create happiness within the human form or the structure, or create the chemicals that are released toward happiness? Anything that you might,
It doesn't
recommend?
start in the plant, Harrison. It starts in the mind. You can drink the plant that is supposed to be. It does not start in the plant, although the plant,
But the plants help, right?
yes, of course it does.
Yeah.
It does.
They do.
But it begins in the
But
mind.
it's the
What is it?
mind. Yeah.
Belief kills and belief cures. So you can have the
Yes.
plant that is supposed to do the most, powerful thing in your body, but that mind thing is going on there. You just don't believe, and so you negate it. And so as much as that plant would want to do what it's supposed to do, in the mind is where it all is. That's
Yes,
where
it all originates there. So is it a natural state or is it a developed state?
it's a developed state. To me, it is developed.
What is
Okay.
what a natural happiness? What
Natural.
Happiness is a natural, if you choose. Again,
isn't that
you
what
can
you're
choose
asking?
to
If
be
it's
happy.
natural or developed? What
Yes.
is Harrison asking? That's if happiness is natural?
Yeah.
You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be sad. Again, it goes back to the mind.
Right, but according to Ashwini, it comes through the birth canal as well. So, Rosy, what's your experience on all that?
I forgot to mention one thing, like in the scripture, it also says that take happiness and challenges, or like good or bad, as a grace.
So you
So
can
the moment you start as grace, yes, as
It
a
is.
grace.
It
So
is.
the moment you start taking it as a grace, it just kind of, and you go inside and you see the whole scenario, like why you're in this situation. And then you see the answers, and it's actually then you actually learn so much from it, and you come out more beautiful, happier person. And then you look back and say, my God, that's one of the best things that happened.
Yeah, so sometimes
Well,
we lost part of,
hello, can you hear me?
yes,
Can
we
you hear
lost
me?
you for a couple
Yes,
seconds.
Rosie.
Okay. I know some people. I've met some people in Ayurveda. I've been to India many times. I met those sages, sadhus. They meditate for days. They eat very little in a whole day. They're picture of health.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
Not
won't
the
say it's
food.
all about food. It's absolutely the mind first.
The mind. Mind.
I when I was in India with Ashwini, at one point there was a guru there who had a pretty large following, but he follows his son. His name was Sun Guru, and And you know Sadhguru, Rosy?
Yes, I met him.
Okay, well, you know, I have a very cute, happy story about this. I don't know did I tell you this, Ashwini, when we were in India?
Yes.
Like after we were, we were all scheduled. The speakers had a special area to have breakfast and lunch, and the audience was in the university auditorium, and we all had breakfast at in this place out in the sun. And Sun Guru went into a meditation, and Ashwini and I and Marbeth were there around him, and. At one point, we all had breakfast, and then the speakers were called to come into the auditorium. And so I started to go toward the auditorium, and everybody had pretty much left except Sun Guru, and then I had already started going. But I remembered I left my cell phone on the table, so I went back and I caught Sun Guru, whose reputation had been that he hadn't ingested any food or water for 60 years. I caught him nibbling on a little
action.
Whoops.
In the action.
But he gets his nourishment from the sun in a particular way that creates chlorophyll in his mouth, and then he swallows that as nutrition. Very interesting, like plants do. Anyway, so that's all very cool. So happiness has values, right? Happiness is a value or has values. So what are some of the values of happiness? Okay, Victoria, what are some of the values of happiness?
Well, I would like to answer a little bit also about what has been said here about the energy and about the cells, because I put it even further. It doesn't exist material. We are just energy. It's just a vibration at the core of the whole. So the vibration, the higher the vibration, the more evolving that we will be. So while we have material and cells and all that need a mere higher vibration, so happiness, it's not that it doesn't have a value. It's the value itself, because happiness is the energy of higher vibration. And everything happens in the higher vibration, right? The opposite, if it's something opposite, is when we start to think. We shouldn't think. We should just live, because thinking destroys everything. So what is the value of happiness? I mean, what is not?
No. Not what is the value of happiness. What are the values of happiness? What is it?
What comes positive about being happy when you are healthier? You are much more creative. You attract to yourself everything that you desire, because you are in a very high vibration. You are in connection with all the flow of life, and life itself doesn't have a purpose. The purpose of life is living, right, and evolving. And about what you said, I don't remember your name, and I don't have glasses, so I don't see your name. Rosy.
I can't see anybody either.
No, but I put my glasses. I want to. We have a. So, Rosy, about accepting everything. I think that the life itself doesn't have any purpose, but life is like a playground, right? We are here just to
have fun.
Yeah. No, not only to have fun, but to experience. And the experiences that we are having, we are attracting. So, of course, they are welcome. What had I done now where I had to learn not to have it again? And if I don't like this, well, I find another way of playing. So the value of happiness is to be in much higher level, so you can always have choices about yourself and your ways of thinking, existing, connecting, and all that. But because if you don't have those values, you are not happy. And happiness is the core to have them. So what is before, the egg or the hen?
Chicken.
I don't know. So
talk about vibration. I'm tingling right now.
What? What did you say?
I said, talk about vibration. I'm tingling right now.
When I get people that are very depressed, I don't talk to them. I say, stand up. And I put very high music. I normally put hip hop because it's and then I said start to move, and many they don't want to move, and I said okay, that's okay, but now you know that you are depressed because you choose.
Did you know the one before Marbeth when I was dating and, I was sort of in a single thing and I was kind of meeting a lot of, possible candidates for relationships and things like that. I often, when I was driving to pick up women or pick them up for whatever experience.
Oh, he's talking about himself. He's telling the truth. He's telling the truth. I remember him when he met my dad. So he's telling the truth. I remember when him and my dad got together. So yeah, he's telling the truth.
Yeah. So when I would go to the experience of meeting somebody, I would always put on very high vibrational music, a very high driving rock and roll energy, because it would pump me up into a place of very, very intense joy. And I just presented myself in that way because I was already pumped, like we just something.
And I am living in Norway, as I said, that I am Spanish, so I have the Latin, very much like you in Israel, right? We are family, we have son, so we have socially, because you asked about the external, how they affect us. And I do believe that the sun is very important. So we, some are Latins, or for warm countries, we have more energy, energetical energy if we want to use it. But in Norway, I see the difference between the winter and the summer. On summer, it's like everything is coming up. Even if it's raining, it's light and people are smiling, people are making noise. But on winter, you don't hear anything. And if you say hello to somebody on the street, they just cross because they think that you are crazy, that you are talking to them.
Well, they may be nice.
But it is true. I am not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. So happiness, of course, they have a kind of happiness, I guess, but it costs them. It's much more long ride for them to have the spontaneity. So one of the values of happiness is also spontaneity, right? Be as a child. Don't be afraid of your vulnerability or to be a little bit fool or crazy. So, I can say a lot of values, but I guess that I don't need to talk.
Okay, so I want to go into some specific values, Shifra. So what are some of the specific values that create happiness? Personal specific values, whatever.
Can I answer one of the previous two questions?
Okay, and we're going to.
I'm going to try to be really quick. So I just want to say, first of all, you're right. These women are, I don't know about foreign, but fun and fabulous. It's really, it's interesting to be with it's a cool group, very cool group. I see like a lot of really strong.
I'm not one of those fabulous women.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, so that's really cool. And then I'm just looking at I'm back to this discussion around purpose. I think that everybody's presenting as in all discussions about deeper truths, everyone is presenting or focusing on a particular bandwidth in the larger framework, right? So I think Rosy emphasized, Ashwini emphasized health and well-being, Burnie emphasized the mind, Victoria emphasized being present, Rosy emphasized accepting everything with grace, understanding that it's all for a purpose. And then I just want to say from the Kabbalistic perspective, I think all of those things are extremely valuable and extremely true in the sense that they're an expression of a deeper truth. I believe from since I'm here to represent the Kabbalistic, Torah opinion perspective, the core idea here is that we the whole God, God, the creator, divine consciousness, whatever you want to call it, source, brings everything into being on behalf of, for a reason. That consciousness has a reason, and that reason is to be able to express itself within every possible permutation of possibility, including and especially where there's resistance. So if you want to put that in very simple words, the purpose of creation, I'm quoting a text, is to transform darkness into light so that the divine light can shine everywhere down here, meaning in the details and the life and the challenges and the mosquitoes and the, you know, in the multiverse, just like it does at source before creation.
No mosquitoes.
No mosquitoes. I know, I always say that because that's my, like that, I hate that almost more than anything. So I just like use that as the, even there, you know, even there. Anyway, so the idea is, so I would just flip a little bit from my own perspective in that context, that when we're talking about happiness, as people are describing happiness, that natural state, that uplifting vibration, that movement that courses through us, that ability to explore and play, I would call that freedom. I would call that freedom to express the energy that we, you know, on all levels, our personal energy, our identity energy, our life force energy, our source energy, our purpose energy, all of that, because otherwise it's blocked. So the more, and that's the principle, the core like quote that comes to my mind every time you say, what's the value of happiness? There's a quote in Torah, in Hebrew, Simcha Paretz Geder, which means that joy breaks through every possible boundary. Like the boundaries of identity, the boundaries of our peers, the boundary of it. It's an energy that just, it's like cosmic, it opens. But I think that there's also the natural state energy of the young child or the Garden of Eden, you know, that innocence that being addressed here so beautifully. And then there are the challenges that shut us down. But then, and I think Rosy spoke to this, when we overcome those challenges by all these different means that are being brought up here, and whatever that, you know, is behind all of those, we reach a higher order of happiness. So it's not just happiness like a kid, it's happiness like a mastery. It's happiness like a freedom, like consciousness, like divine consciousness, like connection, like co-creation. And that, you know, is a never-ending, increasing, expansive level of happiness. And now I can get to the question.
And happiness is a form of order, isn't it?
Yes, 100%. It puts, yes, happiness puts things into divine order. It breaks all the boundaries between things, even though everything then exists, but like a piece of a beautiful symphony. You know, an essential, the core, everything becomes the center and the core piece of this larger organism. That's divine order. Happiness does in the right context. I mean, you could be, happiness is not the same as hedonism. You know, there are different ways to describe happiness. Happiness is, I would call it freedom, but then freedom to what? You know, are we free in chaos? Or are we free in divine order, like you say? And I think that's a really important question also.
Well, chaos is
lasting versus, sorry?
Chaos is a prelude to order.
Yeah, chaos is a prelude to, chaos is a piece of transformation. It is a prelude to order.
You need both.
Yeah, you need both, right? But happiness that's disconnected from the whole is happiness that will be destructive to others, maybe to the self, won't last. You know, so that order that Harrison's talking about, you know, that larger context, I think that's huge. I think that's so crucial.
It is indeed. So we have not only different cultures here, but different religions represented. So let's take a look at what the religion portion of happiness, playfulness, joy is. What is the, you know, from the Indian perspective, from the island perspective, from the Hong Kong perspective especially as well, and from the difference between Spain and Norway, and that and the religion that goes in between. Does the same religion affect different cultures simultaneously, or what? So let's take a look at that. Who's shaking their head? I don't see any of you guys shaking your head. Go ahead, Burnie.
Well, religion, you know, you look at yourself as being religious. I don't see myself as being religious. I'm a spiritual.
Right, there's a difference.
I'm Caribbean. I was born and raised in the West Indies. Grew up better part of my younger days in Puerto Rico. And from Puerto Rico, I'm here in Miami. When I got to Miami, I got to Unity. I got to New Thought. So I'm now presently in New Thought. But back then, I was first Methodist before I became New Thought. So when you look at religion, I no longer look at religion. I look at spirituality.
Right.
You understand? And each section is different, because if I were to look at my days of being a Methodist to now being a New Thought, most of what I am in New Thought now has thrown all of my Methodist stuff out of the door.
Yeah.
Because now I know that it's in me. I'm responsible, not something outside of me, but that which is within me is what really makes me who I am.
Right. So there's
That's
also
the difference in the cultural balances.
Yes. There's also a difference in the way that Hinduism experiences, at least, happiness, or at least talks about happiness, as opposed
Exactly.
to Christianity. So what about Hinduism, Rosy and Ashwini? What about that?
Rosy, you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
No, you. First you, then you, then
I
you.
did.
So,
It's
I
just
got
a
it
very
over with.
Indian thing.
so
Yeah, give me, okay, Rosie, you'll take the Hong Kong thing, okay? Well, and then Ashwini, you take the Hindu thing.
okay, sure. So, I mean, I'm so happy to be with all these powerful women. Oh, everybody is incredible. And thank you, Harrison, for this opportunity. I'm just like, I'm so moved.
Well, this is what makes me happy.
I know that. You
So
like to visit all the
inspired,
women.
so inspired. So regarding Hinduism, I grew up as a Hindu, and so Hinduism is. My son says, "Mom, Hinduism is. You grew up as a Hindu and a Brahmin. It's very conservative kind of brought up." And I didn't see that before, but after I moved to United States, I have become just like Burnie said. I became spiritual. But one thing, so I have evolved, and I'm very proud of my daughter, so that I can see the other side of the, being a spirituality. So, and then when it comes to happiness, because of the exposure to Hinduism and now becoming a spiritual being, recognizing that I'm a spiritual being, taking a temporary human form, I see that happiness, like if you see the happiness, unhappiness and happiness are two ends of the rope. And unhappiness makes us, like I think Shifra said, go through the challenges in life and come to recognize that how we are one with nature.
Yes.
So that's how I don't know, had I not been grown up in India, I was able to see that the way I can see now, or I cannot say it's a hypothetical, like question, or like if I say any statement, but I think it has made me recognize that all religions are powerful, and we are all one human being.
Yes.
And also, Shifra said so beautifully how some of us talked about health and well-being, and some talked about mind. So it's a mosaic. It's a mosaic, and being able to see the mosaic in the state of happiness is a powerful thing for human beings. And I am so happy right now with all these women. Oh my God, it is incredible. So happy. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You are
Thank
quite
you
welcome,
also.
sweetie. Okay, Rosie, how about the Hindu thing going to Hong Kong, which is a Chinese culture by nature?
What I did, I took the best out of my. I won't call myself very religious, but I'm definitely spiritual. I took the best from my culture. I took the best from this culture, what they have to give me, and I think I kind of put it together when my kids were growing up, and I gave them the best of what I learned from India, what I am, and then the best of the Western values, and they grew up so beautifully. So I guess I do not go after any religion. I just go with my gut feeling. But over the years, what I've learned is happiness is the biggest gift you can give to anyone. And like, I take God as a mother. If my child is happy, I'm automatically happy,
That's right.
no matter what.
That's
So I guess it's the best gift you can give it to anyone, and
yourself.
to wherever you come from. You call it God or power or whatever. So it's, and it does, religiously, there are many scriptures in Hinduism. There are many, not one. So they all say that help the poor, be there for others. So that's kind of creating happiness. But end of the day, I guess every religion goes to the same thing, that you're here for some time, make the most of it,
That's right.
and try to create a vibration which is for the universe. So if I'm happy right now, even if my family members are sleeping, I'm creating something so beautiful, which is connecting to my puppy, my helper, my husband, my daughter. So it's kind of our first job when we land up here. And it's not possible if we don't have the challenges. So happiness and happiness, as Ashwini said, it's part of one rope. And end of the day, one part takes us to the most beautiful part of the rope.
Okay,
So
it's not a tug of war. It's the unity. It's the circle of the rope.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So Shifra, I'm sure Judaism and Kabbalism certainly have discussed happiness within the religion and the spirituality of that. So what is the take for and the difference between Judaism, Kabbalism, and their values around happiness?
I mean, Judaism is the expression of the action plan based on the Torah, on the divine download to Moses at Mount Sinai. And Kabbalah is simply the most mystical level of that explains the inner workings of humanity and the soul and how the world is created at every instant from divine nothingness, from divine intention and desire. And there's a lot to say about it, whether it's God's core experience. Kabbalah explains, this mystical level explains, is called something called Shashui HaMelech Batzmu. So it actually has a resonance of playfulness, that God in and of himself, so to speak, as the creator is before, not as the creator, just as himself. His core experience is to a joyful, infinitely pleasurable, joyful self-exploration. So it seems like in that context, one of the purposes for creation is in order to share that experience ultimately, and in order to enhance the experience. So another thing that it says about happiness is that their happiness is only real. It's only at its intense peak when it's shared with others. Right? I mean, we can all feel that there's energy in just having a discussion together, even though we don't even know each other. And it way enhances thinking about these things sitting on our own, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that idea, even to the point where a true celebration has to have new people. Like if you have certain celebrations, like after a wedding, there's 7 days of post-celebration. There has to be a new person at that celebration every day, at least one new person, or it doesn't count, because there has to be that newness. There has to be happiness. So happiness is also that expansion, making something new. It's an exploration. And I think all of this, and I don't want to take too much time, but all of this is reflecting a principle of kind of ongoing infinite expansion from infinity into the finite, and then out of the bounds of the finite into more infinity on behalf of the ultimate oneness. So it's like a complex, very complex system and I completely agree, it's simple with the idea about the two sides of the rope, and it's all really one thing. If you go to the gym, we go to the gym or we exercise because we want to stretch ourselves. We challenge ourselves because we want to stretch ourselves. And it is, as Burnie says, if the mind is like, oh my gosh, why am I stuck here lifting this really heavy bar when I could be out just, sitting? But when we know that we're doing it because it's bringing out these latent dormant powers that we have, even just on that physical muscle level, it's a joy, every time you, and so you can't divide. There's no way to divide it into one, one framework. These are all pieces of the puzzle. And so I would say that more than just being all over in all kinds of different expressions of how happiness is from a Torah perspective, a Kabbalah perspective, I would say that it's part of the purpose for creation. But it's not standalone. It's not, again, hedonistic happiness. It's not just for happiness. It's to create that divine order, like you said, Harrison, that allows for the ultimate expression of happiness, which is totally healing and constructive and never the opposite. That is a win, 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 and then more.
The only reason
yeah,
I
win.
thousand
win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only reason
Infinite winning, infinite wins.
Infinite winning. The only reason I exercise is to be attractive to women like you.
He's special. He's special.
On top of that,
That's why we're all here, right?
So, Victoria, what's the Christian perspective on that? I don't know that you're very Christian, but what is the perspective on that from Christian? Because a lot of Christianity works, talks a lot about the passion of Christ and the suffering of Christ, all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to just kind of get that perspective as well, because I don't really see a lot of the emphasis on that joy portion. I mean, tell me what you know about all that.
Yeah. I grew up in Spain, and I was in a cloister almost with nuns since I was 8 till I was 14.
With
so
nuns.
yeah, with nuns. So, and then I really remember it was most like a terror for a child, because it's all based about guilt and punishment. So that is the part of the Christian and the passion. Christ died because we were making mistakes, and we had to be safe and all that. So it was enhancing a lot of punishment, and also about guilt. So I think it's very, in all religions, absolutely in all religions, it's many good things and are very bad things. And I would say that it's also very much cultural, because in the Christianism is the strongest in Europe today. And why is that? It's cultural, and Hinduism. So I think that generally speaking, religions make it covers a system, a need that human beings have to belong in. We need to belong to something. We have to be part of. So you are born in a society, you are born in a system, and then automatically you will be there. Because I am not Jewish, but if I was born in Israel, maybe I would have been following the Kabalist. And absolutely, I love that idea. So I think that all religions exist basically because of the belonging that we have need for, and also the soul. I believe and I feel it, and in my evolution, so have been very long to come back to my originality, coming out of this guilt that I also see a lot of here in Norway is more Lutheranism, and that for 50 years ago it was terrible, because it was much more like that the Catholicism in Spain, so it was even stronger. So I see still that many people are suffering because of that. But the long ride for me to come back out of that guilt has shown me that in every human being is a longing to know, is a longing to something more higher than us, and that is the spirit and spiritual, right? So I am absolutely not religious. I really believe that the religion for many people are necessary because they don't have anything else. We are all of us in different levels. So
That's right.
absolute respect for everybody. When it's fanaticism, doesn't have anything to do with religion. That everybody would have been, some art fanatic would have been fanatic. Everybody that has need to be guilty, have painful experiences, they are choosing that, religion or not religion. So what I think is that the soul in us has such a longing to know, to evolve. And we are, like you said, that we are, I think that we reincarnate ourselves to experience and to enjoy and to what is it the next? Be in contact with what is our reality, So we do that by exploring, and one way of exploring is to follow and others that have ideas until we come to a kind of awareness and consciousness, and then we think ourselves.
So is religion a prelude to spirituality?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say that, because it's a lot of people that they are like the people in Australia, the down one down earth people, they are not having any religion, but they are spiritually absolute. So I don't think so. I think it's a construction as a
Well, for the
society.
civilized world.
What?
Indigenously, people who are indigenous are connected to nature in a very different way. Or in
Yes,
a very,
Indians, Indians in the United States. So I think that religion.
but in the civilized world, is not, religion sort of a prelude to finding spirituality?
I think it's a prelude for many, but not necessarily, because you asked me if it's a prelude, and I say yes, but
Okay.
not necessarily. It doesn't have to be a religion to explore spirituality. I think that you can go.
No, you don't have to.
Directly.
I agree. It's not a necessity, but it can be a prelude. At least.
I am going to open the door to my son.
Okay.
I take you all with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Burnie, what's your favorite happy experience? What makes you happy? One specific thing that makes you happy.
You should see my garden.
Your garden?
I go out there first thing in the morning. Everyone who knows me knows somewhere between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, I would be in my garden. That's where I do my prayer work.
Like the first morning.
That's where I do my prayer work. I meditate. I talk to my plants. I put things in the ground. I get such joy when I see the little bud just breaking through. Oh my God. That's my day.
My Beth goes crazy when these little sprouts happen in the kitchen.
That's right.
Little things, onions and
just sprout. Just look at a sprout.
Yeah.
New life coming forward.
Yeah,
That's me. That's my happiness.
Good.
Can we see Burnie's garden?
Oh, it's raining a lot. It's raining a lot here, but I can show you some of my garden if you want to.
Wow.
Oh, let's reserve that for a little. Let's reserve that for sort of the next couple of minutes.
Okay.
But let me go through round. So, Robin.
Okay.
So, Rosy, what's one thing that really makes you really happy?
There's not one thing. There are many things.
Yeah, choose one.
Oh my God.
Exactly what Burnie said. I love plants. I love nature.
Oh,
Nature is one place where I can.
Got a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I was just making a little joke about.
Can you hear me?
Plant happiness. I was doing plant happiness. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Harrison also loves nature.
Nature, and when I'm dancing, of course, when the whole family is sitting together and eating, and on some level that all of us, like whole family, has been involved in educating kids, and we've reached more than 1 million kids.
Yeah.
That's also my happiness.
Yeah, that's great.
God is kind enough to give us the sense to do something right with the, money we earn. So that's my happiness. But definitely nature, seeing my kids healthy, little kids. Sorry, not one thing.
Okay. Shifra, what's one thing that makes you happy?
Why do I have to do only one?
We're
Okay.
trying
You know
to
what? I can divide it into two types of things. Things that make me feel fully alive, which could be nature, yes. Could be eating in a beautiful, like, romantic setting with my husband and being able to connect heart to heart, like something that's like a little bit outside of the everyday, which opens the heart. And that's one of the things that makes me very, very happy. And there are a lot of different permutations. And the other thing is feeling like seeing wonderful, positive shifts for the people that I love, whether I help facilitate them or not, but especially if I did. But anytime, that it's just like things that you thought were
beautiful. That makes me happy.
And then it opens. Yeah.
Beautiful. That makes me very happy too. I mean, when I see somebody transform and their face goes soft and their eyes begin to sparkle and their body language relaxes, it feels so alive for me. Ashwini, what's one thing that makes you really? I see Burnie's garden.
Yes,
gorgeous.
He's going out.
That Florida look.
Ashwini, what's one thing that makes you happy besides fruit, Burnie?
Happiness for me is like when my heart sings. whenever my heart sings with anything. And one of the most, like Burnie goes to her garden, what I do is I go to my backyard and see all the birds come.
Birds.
Yeah, the birds. The
Yeah.
birds are singing, and so when they are singing, my heart sings.
Yeah.
And see so many different God has created so many different type of birds, and they can just fly. They can just fly. They are so free, and they don't care what's going to happen tomorrow. If something happens, they're gone. Beautiful colors and birds singing, chirping. That's my most happiness time. I do that
Oh,
every
wow.
morning.
Yeah, I like that too. There's a great story about an Indian guru, which I really love, and I've told this story many times for those of you who've been in my classes and stuff. I tell this story a lot. There was a very famous Indian guru who was going to give a lecture on happiness. He's one of those gurus that wanders from town to town to town to teach. And when he came to this one town, he was supposed to appear on this balcony in front of on a particular day, and thousands of people showed up beneath the balcony. And his lecture was to be on happiness that day. And as he comes out, and the thousands of people are gathered in the square, and he comes out on the balcony and he stands there for a moment, a small little bird lands on the balustrade right in front of him. And it begins to sing, and it begins to sing its heart out. And so the guru is quite quiet for about 2 minutes as this bird just sings. And then when the bird stops and he flies off, the guru says, lesson over.
Oh.
For happiness. So that's a very beautiful story that I like to tell a lot. All right, Victoria or Rosy, did I ask everybody what's one thing that makes them happy?
No, me.
Victoria.
One thing that makes you happy.
Only one thing?
Just as close as you can get to that. I know everybody has multiple things, but
Yeah, okay. But if I have really just to choose one, is when I see people transform. I know that you have said that and you have said that, but it's really true. When at the end of the day, when I go to bed and I say, oh, I could die today, because then I have touched their hearts. That's absolutely the most for me. Is when I see that people get happy, that people can make waves for others, and that I am creating a new way of living. That's the most. But if I had to choose personally, for me, is to be together with people. I don't like to be. I like family. I enjoy a long table and everybody eating and singing and having fun, and the sea. I love the sea.
The sea, the ocean. Yeah. Okay.
Those are Victoria's one thing.
Yeah.
Which we can all add.
Somebody say something?
So everybody is invited to Oslo. I can make food. I can make cook for you.
All right, that'd be awesome.
I mean it. I mean it.
Next year. No travel until next year. We don't travel anywhere until next year.
That's a giving. That's a giving.
Next opportunity. Yeah. So I know one thing that makes me happy is dancing, and I've danced with Rosy a few times. So, Rosy,
Awesome.
what's one thing that makes you happy?
When you're able to make a difference in somebody's life.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Good. So now what I'm going to do is take a round robin. 1 minute, I'm going to ask for your favorite 1 minute story for each person. I'm just going to go around your favorite happiness story, and then we're going to kind of wind this up because we're getting toward the end of the hour. But then I'm going to do two things. Your favorite 1 minute story, and then I'm going to ask you for one that will make other people happy, because everybody seems to agree that making somebody else raising somebody else's vibration also makes us happy. So let's do, 1 minute story, one tip that we can give. Okay, Ashwini, let's start with you.
Happiness story.
1 minute happiness story.
So for me, I go back to the birds. I love birds, and whenever I see the birds, every day I feed the birds. So there are a lot of birds come to my backyard every single day, and I feel their energy protects our house, our home. I love.
Yeah, but tell me a story about the birds. Tell me a story.
Well, sorry, okay. So the story is.
There once was this bird in your backyard.
Yeah. Okay. So the story is we had a robin that comes to our she puts her babies in a nest on the gutter, and the same robin comes. We know that robin because she has like a spot on her belly, and the same robin comes every year in July and have her eggs and babies. And we just love watching the babies grow and fly, those fledglings. It's just amazing. It happened the last 3 years. The same robin comes. Usually, if you put in Google robins to come back, it's usually unusual. So there is something in that gutter that, it's like where the gutter is, like that's where she has this baby. So it's most powerful for me.
That's kind of metaphorical.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So
okay. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. When I started in the transformation business and in doing this for a living, I had a partner whose name was Robin. So that reminds me of that. And then I also took some lessons from Tony Robbins. But okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Tony Robbins.
All right, one tip, Ashwini.
The nature is giving us beauty all the time, and like giving us happiness all the time. We just like when Shifra said, we came from infinite to finite, and we are going back to infinite.
Back to infinite.
Yeah.
Great circle of life. Okay, one tip, Rosy, for other people to be happy. One story or one tip. Your favorite story and one tip. 1 minute story. 1 minute story. All right, we're gonna come back to you, Rosy, okay? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
It's
Okay, we'll come back around. Okay, we're gonna make a circle and come back around. Okay, Burnie, your favorite story, your 1 minute happiness story.
There's so many of those. But like I said earlier, my happiness comes from being in my garden and helping people heal themselves.
I want a story. I don't want to know. I want a story. Something.
There's so many stories coming out of my garden, Larry.
Only one.
I can't choose one. They're just too many. But yes, coming out of the garden and just being in there, helping other people to learn. My favorite story is teaching people how to eat from the garden and how to stay healthy without going through medication and all those other things that break the body down. My stories is seeing a person coming out of chemo, going into the herbs, and restoring their body to better than they were before they started the chemo. Those are my favorite stories, and there are too many.
Amen.
Okay, amen, yes. And one tip, you already got the tip. Go to nature.
I got the tip. Go to the ground. Go back to the Garden of Eden and live from there.
All right. Victoria, one tip, one story, 1 minute story. Something about your baby. What about your baby? What about your vacations? What about your, what about your relationships? What about your, spouse?
I have a story. I want to choose one that maybe is a contradiction for many, but it was when my father was dying. We knew that he was going to die because the doctor said, say your goodbyes. We are going to put him in the drip. And he was dying. He was 88 years old already. And then we were all gathered around, and he was looking to each one of us. One of us, we were about 30 with children and grandchildren. And then the last thing that I remember from my father was the smile. And then he looked his eyes, and that was it. And that is for me, he died as he was, just full of love.
Yeah,
full of love. Not happy, but full of love and accept.
Okay, so happiness and love.
And my tip is also around that. Love is the answer, but I mean, life has ups and downs, and everything is a perception. Of course, we know that, but to have pain sometimes is part of life, but to suffer, we choose. So that's my tip.
Choose to suffer. Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay. So what one piece of advice would you give people listening?
Start to dance.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I do with Rosy whenever we're together. Okay, Shifra, one minute story, one tip.
And you are challenging. Okay, so, okay, if I can say it in 30 seconds, I might do two. So one time when I was in college, I was at a much lower vibration than now, and I was super depressed at one point, and somebody told me, who was a sort of a mentor, told me, go write down a list of things that you're grateful for, and I couldn't think of any. But then I went to the restaurant, I sat and I thought, well, I have clean underwear in my drawer. And I wrote, and I started writing, okay, I can breathe. You know, I started writing down, no, listen, I started writing down everything. I sat there for a few hours, and one thought started sparking more thoughts, until I ended up having 3 pages of things I was grateful for. And it shifted me. I mean, obviously I've never forgotten it. This is a long time ago. Was that more than 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, then I won't say another one. Okay, so that obviously there's so many tips, and there's so many, you know, stories in our lives. So I would say gratitude, and I would also say prayer, and understanding, as has been said here so many times, that the challenges are also here on behalf of, you know, if you have a worldview, what is it? Isn't it Einstein who says that the biggest decision someone could make is whether they live in a friendly universe or not? Mm-hmm. So if we truly, and this is related to the mind, it's related to everything, that framework from which we live, if we do believe in something, and we do believe in the goodness of the something, and we do believe that there's more to us and that the challenges are here to call out something greater, then I think that is the key to ultimate, you know, gratitude and powerful forward movement. And
I love it, Shifra. I love it. But concerning Einstein, what the hell did he know?
Well, you have him behind you.
Good point.
He knew a little bit.
Ashwini, one tip.
Me? I spoke already.
Oh, you spoke already. Okay, Rosy, we're coming back to you. One tip and one story, if you got a story.
Oh, there's so many. Okay, I mean, so many stories. When my daughter told me that I want you as my mom in every life, you don't have.
The speaker's not on.
Yeah, you speak there. Lean forward. Lean forward. Yes, you can't hear you.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
When my daughter said that I want you in my every life as my mom, when my son says that whatever I am today, I mean, you're one of the biggest reason, and, you know, being able to reach more than 1 million kids has been amazing. So many things, I don't know, so many things, connecting to God, talking, I just the gratitude, basically, just gratitude. And
Okay, I'll tell you one of my favorite things. This happened to me. I was working at the brokerage, and I was a young broker at the time, and it was my time to make a presentation to a series of investors, and I was very nervous. I was in a space where I had no confidence in myself. I was quite depressed. It was just my first couple of weeks at this job. This was a long time ago, but it was my first couple of weeks at this job, and I was very unhappy. I had just left a very bad job to come into this job, and now I was expected to make a huge presentation to a large number of important people, and so it was supposed to be right after lunch. So I went to my car, and prior to making this presentation, I was sitting in the car and I was crying. I was bawling like a little baby. And you know, how can I do this? I'm not good at this. I have no confidence. I'm horrible at all this kinds of stuff. And why do they expect me to do this now? You know, et cetera, et cetera. And I began to think, oh God, I'm really in hell. So I went from a bad job to a worse presentation. And I said, then strange thought hit me and said, but if I'm in hell, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. So I may as well be happy. And then it just felt like all this glass crumbled and went to the ground like a bullet in a shattering glass. And I said, okay. And I stood up and I was just full of power and I went in. So it was very, very cool. I'm going to say that I love you guys tremendously. This has been an awesome thing where I could talk to you guys all night because I have dozens of questions on behavior and laughter and playfulness and what, you know, and what the purpose of the universe has to do with happiness and all that, because there is a whole lot of understanding that people need to know, and there's a whole lot of tips that people need to know. But unfortunately, our time is coming to a close. Thank you for coming. We love you, and happy transformations, inspired transformations to you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Harrison.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.